So we heard that song and we thought, you know, we can do that because people want peace. And there is a tremendously greedy factor at work in our society of military craving for more war. And these are military profiteers. I recall that the first president to understand this was Abe Lincoln. And while the Civil War was underway, he became aware of the fact that people were getting rich on the war. And he said, you know, this frightens me more than the war, that there are greedy people in our own country who are getting rich on the death of our young people. And that is unacceptable. And that has been the case ever since. We've had a whole component in our society, the richest component of all, that has access to our tax money so they can make weapons, and then they want to use those weapons. And they become billionaires in the process. They are not patriotic. They are not good Americans. They're not even good people. They just want to get rich on war. And they have been getting rich, and they're getting richer and richer today. That's why the element of privatization came in. People began thinking, you know, we can become billionaires if we have a private army instead of a public army. So let us have a new corporation called DINCOR, and we will be private soldiers, and the soldiers will receive $100,000 a year, and they will go over and serve together with our regular troops from the Army, Navy, and Marine Corps in Iraq. But they will be private, and we're going to make money on it. The same is true with a corporation known as Blackwater. Blackwater's doing the same thing. They're getting rich with a private army, and unfortunately, the people working for Blackwater, that is the mercenaries, are not bound by the military code of justice. So they ride around in Iraq like cowboys shooting people and are just making the name of the United States the worst possible thought that people can have. This creates terrorists. It's hard to say war can stop terrorism. War is terrorism. This creates what's known as resistance. After your home has been broken into and you're peaceful people, don't you think young men and women would begin to resist any way they could? Resist with roadside bombs, resist any way they can. They're under attack. We just don't seem to get it. And now we have what is called a surge in Iraq. We're sending in more troops, and we're getting more resistance. And here I have today the kind of, you might say, the resignation of Cindy Sheehan. She has been among the leaders in the peace movement in the United States. And she wrote a letter to all of us saying, you know, I worked against the Republicans because I felt they were the ones promoting this war. And they called me names, and they threatened to kill me. And when I camped down at Camp Casey near Bush's home in Texas, they objected. And then we elected the Democrats to come in and take over the House and Senate. And I thought we would then be able to stop the funding. And to my shock, says Cindy Sheehan, the Democrats were just as bad. They began to continue to fund the war when they have the power to stop funding it. They don't need a bill to stop funding it. The House of Representatives is responsible for the purse, that is, for our tax money. All they have to do is cut off the funds. Instead of that, they agreed to more and more funds, hundreds of millions more, to continue funding the war they claim to have been against. That was the last straw for Cindy Sheehan. She said, you know, and what surprised her was that then the Democrats began to turn on her, the same way the Republicans did. Why? Because we have two war parties. We have two corporate capital parties. We have the Republican Corporate Capital Party and the Democratic Corporate Capital Party. Both parties are working on behalf of lobbyists. Lobbyists for guns, lobbyists for tanks, lobbyists for aircraft, lobbyists for war. So both parties are afraid, and it shows up in the way they voted. They should have cut off all the funds immediately. It appears the only one in the Congress that really understood, there certainly is more than one, but one very good example is Congressman Dennis Kucinich. He said, stop. We hold the purse. If we stop the funding now, there is more than enough money in the pipeline to bring all of the troops home, to bring them home now, safely. And we should do that now. We have never had a war when so many generals were in open opposition